Hey guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning into the Sovereign Path. And I want to say thanks to all of my new subscribers, all of my old subscribers. I appreciate you guys. So we're going to get into a topic. This is actually a question, and I'm going to start hitting more questions that you guys leave in the comments. It's usually easier if I answer questions through videos because a lot of times there are a lot of nuances in some of the questions that you guys ask, and so it's difficult for me to just write that all down in the comments. So this question came in a few days ago, and it was someone wondering, what does it mean basically when you see the twin in a negative light, right? So when you're seeing the twin in a negative way, you know, how can you sort of navigate this basically? And so I want to dive into this today because it's a great question. And I think anyone who has been on the Twin Flame Path for any amount of time has been here, you know, has definitely seen the twin in a negative way. So what does this mean? Well, it means that you're still in separation consciousness, which is completely fine, which means that you are still running from that dualistic state of seeing the twin as separate from you, right? As seeing the twin as someone external to you, rather than seeing the twin and actually knowing that the twin is your same consciousness, right? So the thing is I know I hit on this in a lot of my videos, but it's important that we repeat things so that we understand them and they start to really drive home what's actually happening here. And then that is that this is an energetic process with your same soul, right? This is an energetic process with your same consciousness. This is why you were experiencing this in this reality at this time, is for you to go through a spiritual awakening and go through ascension. And the main point of going through a spiritual awakening and ascension is to have all of this negative stuff, right? All of the triggers, all of the woundings, all the traumas, the karmas, all of these low vibratory states that we hold within our chakra system, which are running on separation and fear-based energies. That stuff needs to come out, right? That's what we're doing when I'm talking about moving out of the third dimensional paradigm of separation into the fifth dimensional paradigm. And this is a frequency of unity, right? Of union, of joy, of peace, of all those things that I'm talking about when I'm talking about coming into states of inner union. So when all of that negativity is coming up, and this is why I say a lot of times that the triggers are the gold mine, we really need to look at it as, okay, this is coming up for me. And so what does this mean for my own inner wounding? What does this look like for my own inner world, right? Why am I seeing my twin, who is my same consciousness, negatively, right? Why are we having this negative interaction? The reason that we're having these negative interactions with the twin is because they are mirroring back to us all of these negative aspects that we are holding within the self that we haven't yet dealt with. And so we start seeing the twin, who we still feel is someone other than us, external to us, as the cause of this negative emotion, right? We're seeing them as, you're the reason that this stuff is coming up for me, or you're the reason that I'm feeling triggered, or, you know, this is your stuff and you're projecting it onto me, or, you know, this is your issue and you need to heal and you need to do all of these things. And, you know, all the stuff that we hear on this path in regard to what the divine masculine is doing. I've done a lot of videos about this that are really talking about, we have a tendency as the feminine, not gender specific, to see the divine masculine as just being like, you know, they're an ass, or they're like always triggering me, and if they would just stop, then everything would be fine, and why does this keep happening, and why does this keep going round and round, and all of these sort of things. And, or my twin is a narcissist, you know, that's the good one. My twin is an avoidant, all of these sort of things. So if this is your true twin flame, then all that's really happening is that you are seeing the aspects of you that you have not yet faced, right? And so this isn't a good or a bad. This is just part of the process. This is just what's happening. And the more we embrace what's happening as a way of saying, okay, my soul, that's your twin, my soul is showing me all the parts of me that are keeping me in these lower vibratory states, that are keeping me in this negative emotion, that are keeping me seeing my twin in a negative light, that are keeping me going around in a loop and around in suffering and around in all of these different ways that are feeling like super, super uncomfortable to me. All of this is showing you that you need to let it go, right? You need to transmute these energies. You need to clear these energies. You need to face what's coming up. You need to look at all of these things. And so we really need to understand, and I guess I need to precursor this as I do in a lot of my videos. If you're in a toxic situation, if you're in an abusive situation, this is not a twin flame dynamic. So just keep that in mind. Twin flame dynamics are not abusive and they are not toxic. This isn't about excusing someone's shitty behavior, right? That's not what this is. So let's just make that clear. You know, toxic situations, abusive situations, it's a whole nother topic. Okay, so just so you guys are aware of that, it's not what I'm saying in any way. So just have that like continual reflection of self, because that's what the soul is asking you to do. You as a soul is literally triggering your human aspects and these things that you have been holding on to in separation consciousness to break you free and to break you loose. So that's why we're seeing this negative reflection coming back to us, and then we're feeling this negative emotion, and then we're thinking that that negative emotion is being caused by the twin, and so we are reacting negatively to the twin or thinking negatively about them, all of those sort of things. It's because at that stage on the path, we have not yet recognized that, okay, this is my same soul, my consciousness here, reflecting back to me these negative aspects of self that I have not yet come into awareness of, right? So a lot of the stuff that comes up, you know, we don't want to see that. The ego definitely doesn't want to see it. The ego is going to do everything it can to defend every wound that it has, right? Every wound that it's identified with, all of the stuff that the ego thinks that it is, it's going to defend those things. It's going to react to those things immediately, usually without any sort of hesitation, when we feel that we are being, you know, affected in a negative way, or someone is like judging us, you know, someone is like what we perceive as treating us unfairly, or we're like in victim mode, or, you know, why don't they feel the same way I feel, all of those sort of things. When all of these things are coming up, you know, the ego is just going to defend your stance, right? That's what it does. It's a defense mechanism. So it's just going to defend the stance that we have been holding on to for this entire lifetime, and usually prior lifetimes up until this point of awakening. And so it's realizing that, okay, I'm in a defensive state right now, which means I'm actually, my ego, which is not me, this is the false self of me, is actually defending these false aspects of me as well, right? And that doesn't mean that we're like pushing away, you know, our experiences or belittling them. That's not at all what I mean. All of these things have been part of your soul's growth, which are very, very important. But at some point on the awakening path, we have to come to the understanding that these were experiences for the soul's growth, and not your identity as a soul. And you are a soul here having a physical experience of duality and separation. And so these experiences that we've had have been very, very important for our growth and for our expansion as a soul. But these things are also the things that we have to like let go of and release due to the heavy density energies that they carry, that are basically weighting us down and keeping us in this dualistic state and separation. So when these negative aspects of us come up, and we allow the ego to immediately react and defend these things, this is when we have to step back and go, okay, wait, what is my mirror self showing me right now? Or wait, why do I feel so negative toward them? A lot of times we feel this negative, emotion towards a twin, because as I said, they are not reciprocating what we feel, because they are not on the same wavelength as us, because they don't really get it, because they've blocked us, because they've ghosted us, because they've done something that the ego perceives as, mean or, whatever. And so the ego wants to defend all of these things. But we have to keep remembering, and that's why this path is such a nuanced path. And you have to really be aware that this is a path of self, right? This is a you and you path, right? All through the years I was going through this, I kept on saying, it's just me and me. It's just me and me. Because that's what's actually going on, right? It's your same soul incarnate assisting you through this process. And the faster that we can sort of wrap our head around that, the easier, I know this is not easy, this process becomes. When we start recognizing, okay, wait, I'm getting triggered and I'm feeling negative towards my twin. Why am I feeling that? What is within me that I feel that the twin needs to give to me in order for me to feel validated, fulfilled, seen, heard, wanted, etc., right? Because that's generally what's happening. On some level, they are not giving us what we feel we need from them in order for us to feel okay. And so there are all of these nuanced things that are going on in this dynamic that require you to be very sort of aware all the time that this is my stuff that I need to deal with. And that's why I'm seeing it, right? It's not because the physical aspect of the twin is trying to be mean or being an ass. It's because the soul that is us, the one soul, is reflecting back to me through my physical twin aspects of me that I need to look at, right? That I need to deal with, that I need to flush out. This is the whole point of the Kundalini rising. It's shedding all of this stuff up to the surface. And so this is why I say things like, when we're talking about sort of taking deep dives into like, all of the little nooks and crannies and rabbit holes of every wound and every karmic situation and every negative experience that we've had. And those just become endless, right? This is why I say we don't need to do this on this path, because it's already built into the path, like so many other things, as they're just built in. As I've said before, this is soul-led. Everything about this path is perfectly orchestrated. I can promise you. It's just the ego and the mind that is trying to trump it and say, no, it needs to be this, that, or other. The soul is orchestrating this perfectly. And so when the triggers come up, right, you don't need to like go looking for triggers, is what I'm trying to say. You don't need to try to go looking for what's wrong. There will be certain things that you are aware of, a trauma that you had, an experience that you had, something that continues to show up in other relationship dynamics in the past, or a pattern that shows up every time you have a new job or every time you're trying to communicate with a friend. A lot of times we will see these patterns come up because they're very repetitive, especially in karmic programming, right? Which I talk a lot about on my other channel. So when we're talking about these things, they're just going to come up naturally. This is part of this process. The triggers are exactly for that purpose. This negative emotion that you feel is a trigger. Negative emotion that you feel is coming from that dualistic state of high and low, up and down, in and out, off and on. It's coming from that state that I am not balanced, right? That I'm not in that neutral place, that I am still being like thrown off and having all of these highs and lows because I'm still running the program that is telling me that this thing needs to be triggering me. And so then therefore I need to be angry about it or frustrated about it or sad about it. And so that creates a negative emotion within me. And so then I see my twin in a negative light. What this whole path is, I keep saying, you got to flip that thing on its head. You got to flip it upside down. This is a paradoxical situation. Whenever you get triggered, whenever you feel that negative emotion start to come up, you need to stop, you need to reflect, and you need to ask, where is that coming from? Because it's coming from within me. Because the twin, who is my same consciousness, is only reflecting whatever is out of alignment within me. That's their purpose. That's what they're doing, right? That's why this is an awakening path. And that's why this path can feel so painful. Because when you're constantly coming face to face with the negativity that you have been identifying as self for all this lifetimes, then it's difficult to actually get into a place where you want to deal with that. Nobody generally, like I said, we don't really want to deal with that. We just kind of want to tamp it down and leave it alone. And so since our natural, like, I guess, default in the separation consciousness is to sort of tap it down or to act like everything's okay, or to kind of navigate around situations that we don't want to think about or deal with, since that's what we generally do in this reality, it only makes sense that your same consciousness, your soul, your twin flame, physically, is going to continue to reflect back to you all of the stuff that normally you would just tamp down, walk around, not think about, put out of your mind, not really deal with. So since this is our natural state generally for most people, the twin, who is your soul, is going to keep showing you, nope, you got to look at this. Nope, you got to look at this. Nope, this is still there. This is still there. So where are you in regard to this trauma? So are you still holding on to this experience? So are you still identifying with this issue? Are you still identifying with that? On and on and on. And we perceive this as negative, right? The ego perceives this as negative. And so this is why it continues to come up. This is why for most of us, until you get into the path deep enough that you're starting to truly come face to face with your crap, you're seeing the twin negatively, right? And so how do you deal with that? You deal with your stuff, right? You deal with it. You have to deal with it. You can't circumvent it. You can't go around it. The obstacles are the path. Not sure who said that. It's one of my favorite quotes, though. It's not about going around the obstacles. It's about going through the obstacles and seeing them as, this is what I have to deal with now. And I keep trying to ignore it, or I keep trying to blame the twin, or I keep trying to avoid myself or whatever else. But you'll notice on this path is that it becomes relentless. The soul is inexhaustible. It is eternal and it is infinite. It will not rest when it comes to pushing you through the awakening ascension path. This is one of the ways that you'll know that you're actually awakening and that you're actually a twin, is because the whole point of this path is to awaken. And once your soul, who is you at a higher octave, has decided this is the lifetime that we're going to awaken, that's it. There's no free will choice going on here. There's no ego choices going on here that's just like, no, I'm not really wanting to do this. I'm not really ready yet. It doesn't work like that, because you already decided to walk this path before you incarnated in this lifetime. And so now that you are here, you will continually be pushed to ascend. You will continually be pushed to come out of those lower vibratory states of the 3D and to come into the higher vibratory states of the 5D, unity, conscious, harmony, unconditional love, etc., right? And so again, when we're talking about having that negative view of the twin, this is why it's coming up. Our ego wants to see them as negative, or our ego wants to see them in a negative light, and all of these sort of things, because it's the ego mechanisms and the defense mechanisms and the belief systems, right, behind all of that, that you, as a false self of the ego, is trying to hold on to, right, and is trying to defend. That's all the ego does, is it's a defense mechanism, and it will constantly defend itself over and over and over again, right? Every wound that it perceives that it has, it's going to defend it. And the thing is that the awakening path is showing you that the ego is not you, right? You are not ego. You are not fear-based energy. You are not duality. You are not separation consciousness. You are not your emotion, and you are not your thoughts. And, you know, this is a process. That's why I say this is not a one and done thing. This is not a process of like, okay, I stepped onto the twin flame path. Let me make this really quick so I can sort of get through this to the end. Like, once you're on this path, this is it. This is it. You're expanding, and the expansion doesn't end. Even when you come into inner union, even if you're in inner union and now you're in physical union with the twin, it still doesn't end, right? The soul is looking for expansion. The soul wants growth. The soul wants experiences to have that growth. That is what you are doing, like everywhere, regardless of if you're incarnate on Earth or if you're incarnate in any other star system or galaxy or planet or whatever else. The soul, which is you, is looking for growth. And so, as I've said in several of my videos, if you've been triggered and activated to be on this journey, then that means you've had the experiences that you need for your soul's growth in the 3D, right? You've had the experience of separation consciousness in the 3D for long enough. And now the soul, which is you, wants to have expansion in the 5D in physical form, right? This is the point of this. This is a trajectory. It's an evolution. And so when we're always like trying to grip on to the past, you know, to all of our conditionings and our belief systems and our identifications and all of that based in the 3D, that's when this thing starts to feel a lot harder and a lot heavier, because we're sort of pushing our heels into the ground, and we don't want to face what the twin is reflecting back to us, and we don't want to deal with, you know, what's actually going on in this process of awakening. And that's what can create these loops, right? Because we're so deep in the mind and trying to like understand this and still come at it from a 3D paradigm based on the relationships that we've had in the past. And as I've said, this is 5D union. This has nothing to do with the 3D relationship dynamics that we have had in the past in regard to how this dynamic with the twin functions. This is all about energy. It's all about energy. And so when we're always focused on, you know, the physical aspect of the twin and what they're doing and all of those sort of things, then again, it's keeping you in separation consciousness, because you're still looking at everything as being separate from you, including them. So you're moving out of that belief system, out of that paradigm, out of that vibration once you have been activated onto the twin flame path, because this is your awakening. And so since it's your awakening, all of that negative, you know, emotion that is coming at you or that you are feeling from the twin or with the twin is literally so that you can break free from all the things that are still holding you in separation consciousness. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, guys. Thanks again to all my new subscribers. I really appreciate you guys. Have an awesome day.